going, everyone? How's it going, adventurers from YouTube and beyond? Welcome to. Wait a minute. Where is everyone? Oh, it's just us today. Oh, well. Welcome to Cousins by Chance, DMs by Choice, a little conversation between the two DMs of Territories Trespass and, of course, other productions throughout the Whispers of the Dice channel. Today we're just going to have this time to just talk about the campaigns that we've had so far, and specifically Territories Trespass, the build-up to it, world building, and in future episodes we're going to talk about just in detail planning for specific plot points and things in that nature. So, without further ado, I am Jesse.
I'm Joe. We play Kiana.
And we do play Kiana. So first and foremost, the overall campaign planning. I think I was the one that pitched it to you, right?
Yes, I remember I was in a class and I got a text from Josie. Shout out Josie. I got a text from Jesse that said, we should run a campaign together. And if we had no idea what co-DMing was or anything, but we were just like, what if we could somehow do it together? Because then neither of us have to plan a weekly session, but we're both DMing and we could do a full 1 to 20. And I was like, sounds like a lot of work, but I'm in.
Another campaign, and I'm still kind of involved, but we've been on and off like most D&D campaigns. Planning is terrible, and that's why with our group that we pinpointed, we specifically made it this is a commitment. But anyway, I was very D&D starved. I was new to the world, and I was just ready to play, and I didn't know enough D&D knowledge to do it myself, so that's where I pitched the whole co-DMing thing.
Yeah, and I remember for the general campaign idea, I had nothing to do with it. Jesse was like, I already have an idea. Don't worry, baby girl. Here's this lore document, and sent me at the time it was 5 pages of generally just okay, what if it's an Avatar knockoff of an Avatar parody, right? Where we have 4 nations, they have this alliance to not fight each other, this agreement, this peace treaty to not fight each other. Each nation is one of the 4 elements, and one of the nations is being weird. And we, you already had the nation names and what each element was, and just kind of generally what each nation was. You had, Imperial was a nation of wisdom, Varanth was of war, and that kind of thing. And just a very basic I don't even think we knew there was going to be an envoy yet, but you pitched this to me of just this was what was happening, and somehow our characters would fit into it.
Right. Yeah, I think what it was is because I was still learning all of the monsters. I was looking through the monster manual for just the D&D handbooks and whatnot. And, I grew up watching Avatar. Joe, you still need to watch Avatar.
I've never seen Avatar, and I'm DMing a campaign that's based on it.
It's, for those of you watching, if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and watch. It might be a kid's show, but it is chef's kiss. It's phenomenal. But as a kid, one of my all-time favorite shows, still one of my all-time favorite shows, and just really wanted to incorporate that. And I think aligning the Titans, so the Empyrean, the Kraken, the Ancient Red Dragon, and the Harask, I kind of picked different monsters that would fall under specific elements. So obviously the dragon's fire, Kraken's water, Harask is earth, and the Empyrean, which is air. But it's whatever. But yeah, which interesting enough, I was kind of looking over our the Empyrean's sheet in the monster manual, Joe, and we have Empyrean as a god, almost if not the god in the campaign, and technically Empyreans are children of gods.
Oopsie.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oh well, it's our world.
It's a god in this one. Yeah.
Right.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. And I remember, like, developing that a little bit. That was all Jesse. But once we got that in, I was like, okay, so where does our party fit into this world? And if the focus being this peace treaty, we somehow came up with the idea for an envoy of just like, this is a international group of people that has been placed together for the purpose of solving some kind of greater issue. And Jesse had seen this DM tip somewhere that was a great way to start a campaign is everyone meets at a funeral, because then you all have some kind of connection to the dead person. And so then we were like, okay, what kind of dead person would they all be at? And it was like, obviously some kind of big political figure. So then the idea of like Tandem Arcanum dying and the envoy being created to investigate his death, that came up kind of naturally through some conversation.
And yeah, because like Joe said, I had the world picked out based off Avatar roughly. I didn't want the viewers to watch just like, oh, this is basically just Avatar. Like, I wanted there to be something different, and you know, Joe naturally has interests towards like politics and things in that nature, like more in drama, like in that nature. I go bonk, naturally. I think of the epic battles and that kind of stuff, and like my mind still races to like, oh man, like what the final battle is going to look like. I'm not going to get into that obviously because hashtag spoilers.
Spoilers.
But, we're not going to be leaking anything with this episode, but no, I think it was very well planned, and the collaboration between our minds and how we plan things has really like it's been awesome. Like, I've been more than happy with how this world has gone so far, and even if it's just the 70 plus subscribers that we have on YouTube that are watching it over and over again, hey, that's enough for me. Even if it's just the envoy themselves watching it, watching it, rewatching it when I'm 80, I'm gonna be happy.
Well, I've said this many times since we started recording. I don't care if we ever get famous from it. The love and passion and effort that we put into making the content and putting it out there, and just having a like video audio archive of our campaign has already proven helpful. Like, it doesn't matter how detailed your notes are. Without us recording it, we wouldn't remember half the stuff that we need to come back to. We wouldn't remember all these plot holes and all these loose ends that we need to tie up. I mean, there's so much that would just get skipped over if we didn't have video to go back and watch. And like you said, when we're 80.
If you were to look at our text messages between Joe and I, there's tons of things that were like, oh, yeah, that happened. Or I'll confidently say something and Joe's like, oh, no, this happened that, caused it to, conflict with that. I'm like, oh, well, dang. So, yeah, it's definitely a good thing that we're keeping tabs on it. Otherwise, our experience and, of course, the players and viewers' experience might be a little bit all over the place.
Right, and like we'll get into this a little bit in our, well, never mind, ignore me. Like Josie was saying, we have very distinctive DM styles that are, like, I don't know, our styles are that different, because I think I'm kind of the primary DM you learned from, so I think that, like, in a lot of ways we have very similar DM styles, but our areas of expertise are opposite. Like Jesse said, I thrive in high politics, high drama, high role play, narrative storytelling. Jesse does wide world lore, battles, encounters, making an encounter feel like it's worth it, and making it feel cool and cinematic. I think I can do that, but only because I copy Jesse. Like, I say, WWJD. I say, what would Jesse do? And on the opposite end, like, Jesse can do, he DM'd the ball. Like, he can do things like the Tschad ball, and he can DM rumor phases and that kind of thing. But he has to say WWJD, because that's just not his, but Joe that time. Because he just, like, that's not what comes naturally to us, is, encounters and epic, like, video game or action movie style battles don't come naturally to me. But Jesse's played so much God of War or whatever that like he has a mind for how to make cool encounters like that. And I've watched so much Bridgerton that I have the mind to how to make all that drama work. So like that's kind of how I wouldn't say that we explicitly split it. Like that would be too obvious to be like, well, every time Jesse DMs like that, like we're not going to have an encounter because Joe's DMing. Like we don't want to get everybody too comfortable.
Right.
I have DM'd a couple encounters. I will be DMing some more eventually. But just because we like to give good content to our players, I'd say like 75% of the encounters are done by Jesse. 75% of the like just straight roleplay sessions are done by me. And we try to mix and match that as much as we can. But, you know, it's hard to stray when we're good at what we're good at.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But yeah, just kind of going over our little notes here. Casting. All Joe's friends.
So this is where I did everything because Jesse did all of the lore and initial planning for the world. It was his idea. He made the world. He made the general plot. And then I was like, I mean, really, like, we accidentally split the campaign planning into Jesse does world, I do characters. I mean, and that wasn't, like, purposeful, but Jesse did most of the overarching plot outline. We have a chapters document, is what we call it, where we have every session from now until 8 months from now planned out. And it changes every time we play D&D because nothing ever goes quite to plan. But, you know, we have the next, like, 25 sessions planned out. And we know further than that a general idea of where the campaign's going. And that's mostly Jesse. Like, that's 90% Jesse's planning. And me going, sounds great, man. When are we gonna, is there room to kiss in that session, would you say? And Jesse goes, I guess. Right. But like casting.
I think it is like a lot of, you know, big plot points and then subplot points and like just the meat. Like, so like there's the backbone, the lore. I'm a whore for lore, you know.
And I couldn't care less. I'm just kidding. I do care. Right. I love it and I think it's awesome, but I don't, my brain doesn't make it up.
But the world doesn't mean anything if you don't have the subplots, if you don't have the characters, if you don't have the kiss, you know. By the way, watch that episode. It's a great episode. It's
Session 12.
The kiss.
Well, and so, like, on the opposite side, though, having a bunch of subplots and character dynamics don't mean anything if nothing's happening in the greater world, right? Oh, so, for sure. Jesse is, you know, we're trying to fill a mason jar. Jesse is rocks, I am sand. So Jesse puts the giant rocks into there, and I put the sand that fills the cracks in between the rocks. So, but like casting was accidentally all me because I had been playing D&D for much longer. I knew a lot of people who played D&D, which like I feel like you either everyone you know plays D&D or you know no one in your real life who plays D&D. And Jesse knew no one. So I was like, my first people that I asked was Josie, Abby, and Abby said no at first, and that's true. Abby said no the first time because she thought it was going to be immediate, and this was like August of 2022.
That's right, I remember now.
She thought that it was going to, or 2023. She thought that it was going to be like right now, so she said no. And I was like, then later I came back and I was like, what if I said we weren't going to start until January? And she said, okay. But I asked Abby, I asked Danika the same day that I asked Abby, and Danika was like, okay, I guess. Danika had never played D&D before. I asked Josie. Josie had played D&D like 3 or 4 times. And she said, heck yeah, I'll do anything you tell me to. Hold on, I'm thinking. Devon was after I had those 3, I thought Devon would say no. So I was telling her about the campaign. And then I was like, and you know, I know that you wouldn't want to join. And Devon was like, I'd love to join. So she joined. And then Brooks was an accident because we had 5 people already. So we knew it would be me, Jessie, Josie, Danika, Abby, Devon, and then I'm not missing anyone, right? And then Brooks. That's everyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, until Megan much later. But
Right.
Brooks, I had 5 players, and I was like, I'd love to have 6. And I had told Jesse many times throughout this process, I was like, hey, do you have anyone? And he was like,
No.
and then I remember being like, I was just ranting to Abby, and I was like, we need a man. Like, I don't know any men. Jesse can't be the only man in this group.
I'm used to that. I have 2 sisters and all female cousins. Like, I'm used to it.
I know.
I was okay with it.
And a wife and a daughter. Like, you're surrounded by women all the time.
Like,
Jesse's a real feminist. But Abby happened to be doing a writing center appointment with Brooks Julius when I was texting her. And she texted me back and said, I just asked Brooks Julius. He said yes. Did not ask me first, which was fine. I would have said yes. I love Brooks Julius. Shout out to Brooks Julius if you're watching this. But that was how we found the people. And to me, this was my NFL draft of best D&D players. Because I knew more than them. Like, I knew more D&D players than just them. But these were my closest friends who I knew were good at what they do. And I think they each have a very specific skill set that I knew that they would be bringing. I didn't know Danica's at the time because I didn't know Danika hadn't played yet. But Danika was really interested in playing. I knew Danica's writing, so I knew that Danika was great at writing characters, and Maverick's an excellent character. He's like, even if he was just in a book or something, Danica's great at writing multifaceted characters and like super complicated and like messed up guys that you still want to root for some reason. So I knew that Danika would bring something good with that to the table. Abby, I hadn't played with Abby, but I knew Abby had played, and so I knew that Abby was our plot hound. So Abby wants to make a character that is most central to the plot and always is sniffing out the problem and trying to find it. So I knew that Abby is great at that. Devon is comedic relief and always perfectly timed wit, and right as the drama is becoming a little too much, Bart cracks a joke. That's Devon's specialty. Absolutely hilarious. Never lets a mistake pass without making a joke about it. Devon's has a great comedic timing. Brooks Julius has insane outside of the box thinking, where everything he made up with Loric, we were like, how does your brain work like that? I
still don't know.
Everything he says, I'm just like, when I recently rewatched session 1 or 2 maybe, and he asked the DM, is Clementine a fragrance woman? Because he was trying to remember, or he was trying to see if the woman he smelled right now, if he had smelled that at Maverick's room the night before. And like, how do you think of that? Like, and were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
No, I mean, with Brooks too, it was very interesting because he gave us free range with Loric. Like, as far as, backstory is concerned. I mean, of course, he created the character and the concepts and what makes Loric. But even with us having that power, free range, I still had no idea what was going on in Brooks's, which is awesome, because I feel like the problem, not a problem, but a roadblock that people face when they have, they give the DM, just, free range, whatever you want. Like, it just gives too much power to the DM.
Yeah.
And it could potentially lead to, like, the character, oh, well, that's not kind of what I was envisioning. But with this, it was, like, still Brooks's character, but,
But he had such specific things that he wanted us to take control over. So, like, he had, he wanted, and we'll get into, like, specific character arcs and everything in our next episode, but with just character creation, like, he still doesn't know what languages he can speak. Because they're just question marks on his character sheet. We know what languages he speaks. But, like, that was one thing. And he wanted us specifically to take over, like, who was my warlock patron? Like, specific things like that. And, like, like I said, we'll get into that more. But, like, that's Brooks Julius' strength, is he's he leans heavy on the collaborative aspect of D&D, where, like, right now, 3 people have played Loric as of the recording of this video. Megan Lane has been playing Loric for several sessions and plays him until December. We're filming this in October. And he just loves it. Like, the more he wants Loric to be a character that is collaborated on. So when Carter came and added things to it, when Megan comes and adds things to it, he loves that. And he loves Jesse and I adding things to Loric, which is just so cool to see, because in D&D so many people are just like, this is my character, it's very special to me, don't touch him. Don't touch him.
Right.
But to see him wanting input and things to change Loric and to mold him because of the nature of what Loric is just awesome. And then Josie was the only other one that I hadn't gotten to yet, because we already talked about Jesse and I. Josie had played a little bit of D&D before we started. I think Josie has, we were talking in the post-production cast the other day about everybody's kind of cast types, or their typecasts, sorry, where, like, if you don't know that term in theater, it's like, if you're always cast as one type of character, so, like, if you're always cast as some kind of dad in theater, just because you kind of look and have the demeanor of a dad, Josie doesn't have one, which is interesting. Everybody else in our cast kind of does, and, I've seen them play several characters now, and they all kind of have at least one unifying thing to them. Josie has no typecast, in that, like, she's just such a diverse thing, and a diverse player. And Jesse, you've DM'd for Josie for a couple different things. I think you'd probably agree. Like, she can play Cyrus, which is this, like, emotionally inept brick wall of a person, and also, like, Cyrus is such a complicated character, which we'll get into later, all the way over to Tuga, who is the caveman PC that she plays, who is this peacekeeper, open-hearted, heart on her sleeve mother figure, and anywhere in between. She's played a street urchin for us in a not filmed show. Just, like, she has such wide range, as opposed to, like, she doesn't have one typecast that she does really well. She's a jack of all trades, which is Josie's strength, I think. Like, that she's just able to kind of bend her character to whatever it needs to be. Whereas, like, everyone else has one type of character that they play really, really well. Danika does really complicated and kind of bad like, morally bad characters super well. Josie can do, like, anywhere on the range, which is awesome.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Josie, like, one of the last ones that made a character and was like, okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
We need someone from Varanth.
Right. Sorry.
We gave like a list of different, like, popular races, like D&D races, and she's like, oh, I've never played a Fire Genasi before, sure.
Yeah, that was so we had very specific character specifications for this campaign. There needed to be pairs from 3 nations, Imperia, Abyssalia, Varanth, and one of them needed to be political, at least, that both of them could have been, but we wanted at least one political, and if you weren't going to be political, you needed to explain to us why you're here. So, in that case, we had apprentice, bodyguard, right? But I remember, like, first we asked everybody, what nation do you want to be from? Like, which thing? And Jesse and I were like, we'll just pick whichever one, so that everybody gets a choice. And so Danika and Abby chose air, Loric chose water, and Devon chose fire. And then me and Josie, like, us and Josie had not chosen yet. And I was like, we kind of wanted to play a grung, so we were like, hey, what if you went to Varanth? And so Josie was like, ah, whatever. But, I mean, like, for their choices, I did 5 of the session zeros, and Jesse did Brooks's. And that was just because I happened to be physically with the other 5 to help them make a character sheet and to create a backstory and whatever, and so I just relayed everything to Jesse. But you did Loric's backstory, but, like, I remember, like, we had already told Brooks that we were going to be a princess. And so when he said that he was, had this idea for Loric of a minotaur that didn't remember who he was, we were like, okay, bodyguard. And Devon, I remember calling Devon and, saying like, okay, you said you want to do this. You said you want to do Fire Nation. You need to be politically important somehow. Like, how do you want to do that? And Devon couldn't think of anything. And she had this backstory idea where she wanted to riff off of the Wattpad idea of like, my mother and my father didn't appear to my birth, and then my mom sold me for alcohol to BTS, to a band, to One Direction or whatever. So I said, okay, let's go with that backstory, change it so it doesn't seem as Wattpad-y. And then she wanted to play a bard. She loves playing a bard. Devon's only played rogues before this campaign, and a bard is like the comedic relief class. And so I was like, I think that'd be a good choice for you. She's never used a spell. She never has since then either. And
she's a few.
She's 5 or 6 cantrips. And
yeah, true, actually.
And we eventually were like, what if you were the bard hired to follow this envoy and write songs about them? And Devon was like, perfect. I don't have to be involved in politics. And that's what Bart has done. And so then Josie, needing to fill that space, I was like, how would you like to be a bodyguard? Josie had only played spellcasters up to that point, and she was like, I'm looking to play a martial class. She misses her spells dearly. Josie is absolutely ruthless with spells. I've DM'd for her as a sorcerer and a wizard a few times, and she'll mess you up as a DM. I mean, she knows how to use spells, so, like, she's really restrained with Cyrus. And so then, yeah, like Jesse said, we just went through and she was like, never played a fire genasi before, never played a fighter before. And we did that. And I remember Danika wanted to play a human barbarian and classic Danika Smith. And I said, okay, how are you going to be politically important? And then Danika spewed this incredible, like, well, you see, I'm a black sheep politician idea. And then Abby was just like, I've never played a monk before. I kind of want to play a monk. So we wrote monks into the lore of Imperia. And, and we were like, Abby's playing a younger person than Maverick, so we didn't think bodyguard made sense. But then we were like, oh, apprentice. So we did one-on-one session zeros where I helped them make their character sheet and we talked about what their character wanted to be. Loric got a joint session 0 with Kiana, where I played Kiana and Jesse DM'd it. Right. If you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, it was by far my first experience with a session 0, not only just like my first, DMing a session 0, because the campaign that I was previously involved with, they didn't do any kind of session 0. It was like your stereotypical for session 1, you're in a tavern, what do you do? And it was kind of like that. So I didn't even know what session 0s were. And so, of course, I planned out this as if it were just a regular session 1, but just only one character, basically. Mm-hmm. So I had that all planned out. And the first half, we kind of, I wish we would have recorded it because I thought it was really done really well. But, yeah, I mean, it was nice to have that space to where we could kind of hash out the complex mind of Brooks Julius before knocking into roleplay. Because that mind is insane.
It's a crazy one. Yeah.
Do you want to go over like what we did session 0 or?
I don't know. I think whatever's come through in the plot can, be out there, but like, let's, whatever hasn't been revealed, let's keep it a mystery. He's mentioned the old lady's voice before. Wonder what that's about. And he's mentioned that he killed someone within 15 minutes of being alive.
Yeah.
But, I think until Loric reveals that, until Brooks decides to reveal all that as Loric, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe we let Brooks keep a secret. But
secret.
Everybody did joint session 0s in pairs. So Maverick and Theo, we had Maverick go speak at Theo's school, and then Theo was assigned to give him a tour. I DM'd that one. And that's That was that one. And then for Varanth, it was just Cyrus was getting hired for a call, and then she saw the posting to protect a celebrity on a trip to a funeral, and then she went and they met. And then we had an all-together session 0 that Jesse DM'd.
Did we?
Yeah, because we had, that was when everybody, that was when you had everybody, like, Joel went up to Maverick and was like, how about you get that kid that you saw in the Monk Academy to come do it? That was when we were sitting side by side in your house, and I played Kiana. Did I play Kiana? Maybe. I must have played Kiana.
I vaguely remember this.
We didn't do much playing. We did a lot of planning, but we played a little bit because we had to get everyone invited to the funeral. And so that was taking everyone from, like, each pair meeting to, because you went up to Bart and you were like, hey, you're going to go on this funeral on behalf of us. We're going on world tour. And he went, am I getting kicked out of the band? And that was when Joel went up to Maverick, like, hey, you got to go to this funeral. Why don't you take that kid with you? And he said, isn't there anybody else that could do it? And he said, yeah, you.
Yeah, you.
And then you had Cyrus wait in line. Yeah. You had Cyrus wait in line to try out to be the bodyguard, meet Bart. And then for Loric, it was literally just Daddy being like, okay, don't mess this up. And Kiana was like, oh, nice to meet you. Yeah.
Right.
That was kind of how we did that. But, like, I mean, on the topic, Kiana, co-DMing.
Our baby. Fun fact. Kiana was almost a kobold.
For a while, too. Like, for
a while.
For a long portion of the creation process, she was a kobold from Varanth. And she was going to be, like, the child of a war council member. And then last minute we changed. Right. I think because Devon wanted to be from Varanth, we changed. And you found grungs and liked them. Yeah.
And I think also, like, kobolds are used a lot in a bunch of other campaigns that I've seen just on TikTok. It's a very popular, like, because we wanted to play someone small, just for that little, I don't know, kind of just ongoing joke of someone being small. And halflings and kobolds are pretty used commonly. You don't really see a lot of grungs, so, which there's a lot about grungs that we don't really throw in with Kiana. Like, technically, Kiana has poisonous skin, and we have everyone kiss that hand.
We do.
We do. Technically, grungs are racist.
We don't talk about that one.
Yeah. Read the lore docs on grungs when you get the chance. It's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I think character creation for us, it was a challenge at first, because when you co-DM, obviously you alternate sessions, and, you know, I think it worked out pretty well. Been working out pretty well so far. I mean, it hasn't been too awkward.
We talked about, like, what to do about it, about, like, what does the other person do when they're not DMing, and so we decided on, we would share a PC somehow, and we just didn't know, like, there was an idea for a bit about doing a Loric and having multiple personalities, and we just switch who's fronting. Like, we talked about doing that, and then at the end we were just kind of like, I think let's just do a normal PC. I think let's just do something normal, and like, just switch playing her and try to play her as cohesively as possible. And I think we've done a good job. I mean, like, there's definitely differences between our PCs, but I think it's fine. Like,
right.
It doesn't really.
Yeah, my Kiana is more sassy, and you're just more whimsical.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and, like, I was nervous about that at first, just because of, like, you know, Joe had asked me, like, okay, like, you know, I don't care if before Kiana was named Kiana, I don't care if this grung is a male or female or whatever, you know, what do you want to, and I was like, sure, I don't care, let's just do a, you know, female, and the
we
whole
flipped
time
a coin.
I was thinking, like, what was it?
Do you remember that we flipped a coin?
We did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it landed on, I don't know, whichever side meant woman. Yeah.
Right. And I remember from there on, I was like, my voice is naturally very deep. And I was like, this is going to be a challenge, roleplay wise, because I'm already rusty with roleplay sometimes, and I feel like I've gotten better since we started. But yeah, I remember that was a challenge for me in the beginning.
Yeah, but I remember like we had lesson or not like lesson, but like I coached you on how to act like a woman, which don't
Right.
don't clip that. But we but like I showed him clips of Burnley Mulligan playing the mom in Burroughs End. I forgot her name.
Right.
And I showed him like Brennan's not doing a woman voice. Like he's not raising the pitch of his voice. He's just talking more like gently and using more like feminine language. So he'd be like,
Right.
"Wow, do any of you guys feel scared right now?" Like he just kind of talked more softly and not making his voice any deeper, but just not necessarily like doing a voice either.
Right.
And also, like,
Which,
our players know that Jesse's a man and I'm a woman, so, like, they know there's going to be differences.
which, shout out to Brendan Lee Morgan, because that had helped tremendously.
Yeah.
Shout out to Joe for helping me with that.
Well, I think, like, this is slightly tangent, but I'll stop in a second. Like, in voices in general, I think people, when playing games, especially long-form characters, like a 1 to 20, you think about like, well, I'm either doing a voice or I'm doing my normal voice. And they're like, they forget that there's an in-between, right? Like, I'm not doing an accent for Kiana. None of our players do an accent, but they aren't talking regular either. And like, maybe like we don't maybe see that as much because you guys only see them playing these characters. But I mean, like I was talking about earlier, look at Josie playing Tuga versus playing Cyrus. Tuga's closer to how Josie acts in real life, but Cyrus, she kind of like, and like changes her inflection and she talks a little bit more sassy or lowers her voice a little bit. Theo raises, like pitches her voice up, sounds a little more nasally to be Theo. I definitely raise my voice an octave and talk more like, wow, like more animated, like I'm an elementary school teacher or something. Jessie talks more, like has more of a cadence like a female, but none of us are doing accents. We're just changing our voice slightly to accommodate that. But yeah, I mean, like, so I love co-GMing. Like that was kind of like our last thing that we did. I've co-GM'd for this, which I could not do a 1 to 20 without it. We talked about it earlier, the rocks in the sand. Like I couldn't
almost did, and I canceled.
I couldn't do a 1 to 20 by myself. But I've also I co-DM'd for a shorter campaign for post-production, which is now on YouTube. And we did, in link in the description. And, we did that one differently, right? So Jesse and I swap and we share a PC. When Aaron and I did post-production, we split up responsibilities. So we were both GMing all the time, but we would take turns who was in the driver's seat and who was in the passenger seat, right? And the driver's seat person would adjudicate dice rolls and they would help the characters do what they wanted to do. The passenger seat person would describe the world. They would make things happen to the characters. So it would be like, the players want to get in a car and drive down the road. Then the driver's seat would say, okay, roll a this check, get in the car, you guys drive away. And then the other person would say, but then you guys are driving past all these trees and then you get a flat tire. What are you going to do? And we just kind of back and forth. But like, there's a million ways to co-GM, but there's something very classic. And I think that requires a lot of trust between Jesse and I to just pass it back and forth, right? Because us co-GMing the way I just described with the driver's seat, passenger seat would be exhausting for 1 to 20. And, like, Aaron and I planned that entire campaign together, right? Like, every session we together planned every session, and it was just who was doing what, and we would have to split it up scene by scene and that kind of a thing. And I think it showcases our trust between Jesse and I. Not that Aaron and I don't trust each other. Love you, Aaron. But it's just a different style of GMing that works very well for a short campaign, and makes for a very like intertwined dynamic story. Ours works better for a 1 to 20, because you're getting, you know, the original purpose for us co-GMing this was to make less work. So it makes less work, and it also like gives you two very different tastes, right? Because we have very different things that we're in charge of. And it just shows our trust between Jesse and I to pass it back and forth like that, where when I finish my session, I tell Jesse anything that we didn't get to, you know, like, hey, I was going to do this. We ran out of time. If you want to do it, you can. I tell Jesse what I envisioned to come from whatever I proposed. And then Jesse plans his session, and he does the same thing when he finishes his.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think it just the overall it helps with burnout. Because, and like I said, I was about to do another 1 to 20, just by myself, and got to the point where I made the world, and I had an idea for a plot, and it just completely, after we had a session 0, my brain just mushed, and I unfortunately canceled it, and we basically switched gears, and someone else took up the role of a DM, and we're doing like a more brief, shorter campaign where it's like probably like a 1 to 12 or something like that. But yeah, definitely, I don't think I've ever felt burnout with Territories Trespass.
And it's an awesome improv exercise too, because sometimes, I mean, like, we try to keep as much secret from each other as possible, which is also like contrasting to how I did post-production, where, like I said, Aaron and I planned everything together. I knew exactly what he was going to say. I knew exactly what he was going to do. I don't know what Jesse's going to do half the time. I mean, we have this chapters document that we've talked about where we know basically, like, for example, the episode that just came out was the debate. And Jesse knew, based on what the chapters document said, that they were going to get to the end, there'd be time for role play, they would, Clementine would come in, they would go to the debate, and then I would give them a little bit of time to role play after the debate. He knew that that was going to happen. He didn't know what the debate topics were. He didn't know what Don Smalls was going to say. He didn't know what Clementine was going to say. I didn't know
that Bart was going to spray orphans.
He didn't know that Bart was going to spray orphans. Like, he didn't know any of the rumors before they were presented. And same with, like, the opposite. Like, I knew that we were going to fight the Paladins. I didn't know any of the inner workings of how the battle worked. So, like, we try to keep as much secret from each other as possible. Just because it keeps us... I think it helps us for metagaming a little bit, too. Like, when I'm playing Kiana, I feel like I'm playing Kiana and that I'm a player and that you're the DM. And it helps, you know, like, when we swap, that, like, I feel like the DM, I feel like a player. And so I know generally what's going to happen, and I can help guide if we get super off track, which we never really have. But, you know, occasionally, like, you'll see Kiana be like, guys, we've been in this tavern for 6 hours. Let's go. But, you know, I know a very basic of what's going to happen when I'm playing Kiana, but it helps us to roleplay, which means that at the end of every session, you have 2 weeks to take the story and continue it. Like, it's like that thing that you do in English class where, like, you'd write a sentence and you pass it to somebody else, they write a sentence and then they pass it back. And you just don't know. I don't know where Jesse's going to leave me off. So then I pick up, and anything new that he added to the story that I didn't know was going to be there, I can continue that thread through. And it's a great improv exercise.
It definitely is. I typically have, just because of my own excitement, the minute it's my turn to DM again. So, like, after I get done playing Kiana, we film on Thursdays. So, like, Friday morning, I'll be, like, literally, like, typing away, like, I have an idea. But I still take that 2 weeks to just kind of split it up, and, like, I'll add big plot points for the session and then, like, little tiny things in between.
Sometimes I plan it Thursday night after we get off. Sometimes and that's normally just like, blah, 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 this is happening. And then over the next 2 weeks, I'll be hit with like, oh, and what if this happens? And I go and add more. And, you know, it's normally done in plenty of time for the next Thursday. But
which I think that speaks volumes too with our method of co-DMing and how beneficial it is, because you see so many like TikToks and so many stories of DMs like after a session's over, they're like, oh my gosh, thank God that's over. And then it's just that like you get over that slump, and then you're like almost like procrastinating scheduling next session because you're like, oh my gosh, that was a lot.
Or procrastinating planning the next session. Like, even if you guys have like a weekly day set up of like, I remember playing on a home game, the first home game I ever played in, the DM just like loved playing with us and loved D&D, but I was good friends with them, and they would just like, we played on Thursdays, actually. We played every Thursday, and it would be like Thursday morning, and they would be like, yeah, I gotta plan for tonight's session. And I'm like, look, I didn't know anything at the time, but looking back, I'm like, I feel bad for people that don't feel invigorated and excited about their campaigns. And I think that co-DMing is like a real solution to that. To just like, or playing every other week is a game changer, because you and I only have to plan one session a month. And we still get to play every 2 weeks, but we don't have to plan except for once a month, which means that we get to put as much creative energy as we want to in it.
So yeah, if you enjoyed what you see, be sure to keep a lookout for more Cousins by Chance, DMs by Choice episodes. We'll be doing these quarterly as we visit the different nations of Arenica. So yeah, be sure to stay in tune for those. Of course, stay in tune for Territories Trespass, the Shattered Alliance, and the Caveman and the
post-production
Truman Show.
Yeah, Truman Show.
For sure. We love you guys. Thank you for the support so far. See you guys later.
Bye!